Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Hyperconscious Podcast. Alan, what is hyperconscious?
Once you understand why something is the way that it is, now you have the power to change it. Great conversations with great people and great questions are the keys to the kingdom of unlocking your consciousness.
Every single action that you do starts as a thought. When you control the way you think, you will control the way you act, and you will control the way you live. That is hyperconscious. Geographically? Geographically. This is cool. So I would say make sure that pretty face is showing.
Yes, true.
They're going to want to see that thing. They're going to want to see that thing, Alan. That face. You good?
Ready?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of the Hyperconscious Podcast. We hope you listened and enjoyed listening to our most recent episode with Mr. Devin Klein. Today we are going to hit you with another 10-minute small talk, and we are going to do it on the word simplicity.
Yes, so thank you to my client, Emily, for this word suggestion. Please DM us with your word suggestions.
Yes.
We love hearing from you guys. So, friendly reminder real quick, the hyperconsciouspodcast.com is up. If you get on the mailing list, we've had a lot of you guys sign up. Thank you.
Yes, we appreciate you.
Yeah, we have 3 morning minutes coming to you, Hyperconscious morning minutes to kickstart your day off right, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And we wanted to remind you of that.
Yes, and also we have some free content up on the website. So if you went to the website when it first launched, we didn't have that up, and we have since put it up, and it gives you an idea of what to expect when you sign up. So just wanted to let you guys know that as well.
Yeah, and we just did that vision board course and just put that up as well in the members area.
Yes.
So simplicity, I have the definition up here that I'm going to read. Freedom from complexity, intricacy, or division into parts. An absence of luxury, pretentiousness. What's another one here?
There's always one useless one.
Right, and here it is.
Yeah,
Ready?
right,
the state quality or an instance of being simple.
Right.
Lack of mental acuteness or shrewdness. I don't think that one's very relevant.
No.
But yeah, so let's go into simplicity.
Sure.
And how it applies to our lives. So the first thing I wanted to say in this episode is that I love this word. So we did an episode on consistency last week. And Tony Robbins has a quote that I've kind of, ever since I heard it, sort of lived by, or at least tried to live by. Complexity is the enemy of execution. And I think that you have 3 things. You have the way you think, you have the way you feel, and the way you act. And I think a lot of us struggle with the action part of life. And that's why I like simplicity so much, is because the more simple you make something, the more likely you're going to follow through on actually doing it. And that's what I do with my fitness clients as well. My job as a fitness coach is to make the system as simple as possible so there's no excuse not to execute.
Yeah, so we were talking a little bit about, I consider myself a very simple person.
Oh, yeah.
And I try to only do what's necessary.
Yep.
At this point especially, like what is necessary to get to the next step? Like, do I really need to do, like, sometimes I'll talk myself out of doing things because I realize it's just not necessary. So I think if you're listening to this, do you have a habit of making things more difficult than they have to be? Like, do you have a habit of trying to climb the mountain in one step? And I think that's an issue that I've had in the past, where it's like, I need to get all of this done right now.
Yep.
All of this has to get done right now. Before this episode, we were going over a checklist. And it's like, I'm freaking out here a little bit because
You have to leave by...
I have to be out of here at a certain time, and I'm already,
Right.
rather than just simply going through this list,
One thing at a time.
Yeah, one at a time.
We have-
Focus on one thing.
We have 7 items for reference of things when Kevin got here. We immediately went to the whiteboard. What are the 7 things we need to get done? And then you got a little overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I think that's where a lot of people spend their whole life.
I do too, and that's why, like, if you feel overwhelmed when you're like setting out to do something, I understand you. Trust me, I know exactly how you're feeling. That is why we've talked about this before. We did an episode on it before. The system of success has been very big for me, and also my clients as well. I stole it and I've been using it with them.
No, you're good. Yeah, good. I want that to happen.
Yeah. And anything I use and works for me, especially if I steal it from you,
Yeah.
I like to use with other people. But you need to break things down into logical steps, into easily attainable steps. If I like to go back to the house analogy. If you're building a house, the first thing you do is get a blueprint.
Yeah.
You don't start hammering nails into the wall. You got to figure out what you want it to look like. So
Exactly.
I think a lot of people complicate things. And you and I were talking the preamble again, and like there's a lot of noise in the world through social media. So you might be complicating things without even knowing it. So like, I'm sure you've done this, right? I'll go on Instagram.
Oh, yeah.
I'll be prospecting.
Right.
In my head, that's an easy thing.
Yeah.
It's not hard.
Send a couple messages, to potential
Yeah,
guests
okay.
that have great stories
But-
and big hearts.
My Instagram knows that the things I like. It knows that I like fast cars, tattoos,
Right.
and MMA fights.
Yep.
So the next thing I know, it's been 25 minutes and I haven't sent the message. Now, you might be saying, well, that has nothing to do with simplicity or complexity. Well, it kind of does. Because I turned an action that is just super simple. Find somebody that resonates with us, send them a message, say, hey, we would love to have you on. We think you would resonate with our listeners. And then, boom, done. But I'm doing other things.
Something that should have taken you 5 minutes ends up taking you 35 minutes. And
Yeah.
not only that, but you're overwhelmed now. You feel behind now. It's
And
a
I have
feeling.
I have a
Right.
negative association with prospecting, because every time I prospect, I'm on Instagram. When I'm on Instagram, I'm screwing off.
Right. So for those out there right now, I don't know if you've ever seen the documentary on Netflix called Minimalism.
No.
But it's really, really good. And the premise, the quote of that is, use things and value people because the opposite never works. And like Kevin said, like we have a phone in our pocket where the entire world is trying to get your attention at literally all times. And they know what you like and what you don't like. And so it requires a level of dedication to simplicity in order to move forward. It's sort of like the tortoise and the hare. The hare is trying to get it all done right out of the gate, is going too fast and too speedily out of the gate, and the tortoise is kind of slow, consistent, methodical, headed in the right direction. So we sort of have this constant tornado of misinformation being dumped on us, whether it's through Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. Like, it can be really overwhelming. In reality, pardon my
English
there,
hashtag speaker.
right, a speecher. In reality, if we just let the dust settle and we went into each day like, okay, what are the things that are important to my life? Kevin and I talked about this in the preamble. If you haven't gone back and listened to the episode where we reverse engineer regret, we wrote 3 columns. One of them was what we definitely will regret. One of them is what we might regret, and one of them is what we will never regret. And it brought into very strong clarity in our consciousness, like what really matters.
Yeah.
I'll never forget when my dog passed away. He got hit by a car, and that's a story for another time. But it was a really, really traumatic moment because my mom and sister like loved that dog to death. He was in our family for 12 years. He was part of the family. It was. I went for a run around the block, and I basically got back, and I thought there was a trash bag at the top of the driveway, and it ended up being my dog. And it was like there was no possibility of bringing him to the vet. It was done. In those kinds of moments when you don't, it's almost like, okay, what really matters? Family, health, my dog. Those are the essential things. When you're in the dark, that's what I think the value of the darkness is like emotional pain will bring into your forefront what actually matters to you. And once you figure out what really matters to you when things are most dire, make sure when things are no longer dire and you're rocking and rolling and life is good that you don't lose sight of what really matters. And to me, that's the most. You basically quoted Van Gogh, I think.
Look, I didn't do it well. I tried to quote it,
You
and
tried.
it was atrocious.
So you said something along the lines of
Oh,
simplicity is the greatest form of sophistication.
I believe that is the actual quote.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I've said this many times. What we fail to appreciate in this life will always eventually dwindle. What we appreciate in this life will appreciate. In other words, it will grow. So whether that's your family, your friendships, your intimate relationship, your business, your job, right? Figuring out what really matters and keeping it simple and staying, more importantly, staying focused on those things and getting rid of like a lot of the nonsense, a lot of the noise that at the end of the day just really won't matter.
I think you and I, we're on different, not pages, but we always, these, especially like the words, we always usually go like two different ways with it. And for me, it's like one of the biggest questions, I won't even say questions. One of the biggest things that I do when somebody reaches out to me and they say like, you really helped me get clear on this. It's not because you didn't have a clear vision. It's because you were looking at the final product. You have to know where the final product lies, but you have to know what the first step is.
Right.
To me, that is what simplicity is. That is 100. So I've had a lot of people say like, well, you know, my dream is to do this, but I could never. If you want to open a dog shelter and you're worried about the classification on whether or not it's a CO31B,
Oh, yeah,
like any
right.
of that,
Yeah,
you're
man.
looking at the wrong thing.
And you're going to get overwhelmed and not even start.
Yeah. So, guys, I didn't know how to form an LLC
Right.
until we decided, oh, shit, it's time to form an LLC.
Yeah.
Before that, it was, what kind of gear do I need to start a podcast?
Right.
Right. So whatever it is for you, I love the fact that you have your grand vision. I love that. But don't get so caught up in looking at the top of the mountain that you forget that there's steps that you got to take down here that are going to bring confidence. And the better you get at doing the simple stuff, the more complex stuff you can do and make it look simple.
Right.
You level up. You get to the next summit. You get to the next summit. You get to the next summit. So obviously we're on different pages, but I think that's the beauty of this dance that we have.
I think we're on, so clouds and dirt, we always say that.
Yeah.
You know, I am a lot of the theory, you're a lot of the practical tips.
Because
So
I'm simple.
I often talk about the 10,000 steps and like the grand vision of the top of the summit. Kevin often talks about the next critical step.
Yeah.
And it's you need sort of to live in both of those worlds. So like, for example, at the beginning of 2019, let's say you set some big, hairy, audacious goal and it's 10,000 steps in the future. You now, if you wake up every morning looking up that staircase, you're going to be overwhelmed, and you're going to be so overwhelmed that you're not even going to want anything to do with it.
Yeah.
Whereas if you look at only that next step, like buying the podcast gear,
Yeah.
right? And that's why mentors and coaches are so important, because they'll help you they're already up there, and they can say, yo, I get it. Okay, this is how we got here. Just look at this next step. This is your next step. We have weekly masterminds with some different podcasters and stuff, and it's helped tremendously because it takes the overwhelming intimidation factor down when someone has already done it and they can say, yo, like, you're going to be fine. Like, you got this, and this is how you do it.
Yeah.
The timer's about to go off in 7 seconds.
Are you done your thought?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a fine line, right? Because it's this dance between. Okay. So say you have no idea what it takes to be where we are.
You're right.
Like a year and a half ago, I didn't know what it was going to take to
Nothing.
be where we are right now.
Yep.
But I also said I'll do whatever it takes.
Mm.
How many people do you know that start something and they only see the next step until they get to a step that they never planned for and they don't want to take that step? We know a lot of people
Interesting.
that have started things
Yeah.
and made it a couple times in, a couple times at the gym, a couple episodes, a couple songs, a couple
Right.
whatever it is. So there is this fine balance of keeping it simple, but sometimes things are complex. You have to break that complexity into the most simple steps you can. And I think that's, life is complicated.
Right.
There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that.
Which is why simplicity is so challenging.
Yeah, and that's why it's almost hard to lock down. Like, I could tell you what's simple for you. I could tell you what's simple for me. If you're listening right now, you have to figure out, like, what could I make? I just spit everywhere. I apologize for that. What could I make easier in my life? Like, what are the non-essentials that I'm doing?
Yeah, man. I had you. Okay, so I'm gonna get into some numbers here quickly. Very
quickly.
So Pareto's principle
Oh, here we go.
states that 20% of your actions are responsible for 80% of your results. Now, without getting into the background of that, just okay, so that's a one input for 4 times the output. So if you focus on the 20% that matters most, you're going to get far more return on investment. So for example, to bring this whole thing of simplicity down to earth, it took me 3.5 years of focused daily effort under a mentor in the natural fitness game to really make it simple. So if you study my content, if you're a one-on-one client of mine, if you're a listener to this podcast, you know that I have the 5 fundamental pillars of natural fitness: sleep, hydration, nutrition, training, and mobility. Now, those are in order of importance based on what you will die without. You'll die without sleep quicker than you'll die without water. You'll die without water quicker than you'll die without food. You'll die without food quicker than you'll die without exercise, and you'll die without exercise quicker than whether or not you are stretching and staying mobile. Now, those 5 pillars, to be completely honest with everyone out there, based on everything I've studied, are what matter most. That's the 20%. All that other stuff, sweatbands and 21-day fixes and, supplements and all that stuff, it doesn't matter as much as those 5 things. It took me 3.5 years of complexity to find the simplicity in the game. Everything is complicated at first because you're new. Podcasting was so complicated at first. It still kind of is.
Yeah.
We're trying to make it simple. You're going to make more distinctions on what really matters as you fail forward in a certain arena. Because every time you fail forward, you realize, okay, well, this worked and this didn't. This mattered and this didn't. So simplicity, I think, is the greatest level of sophistication because it takes years to really hone in on what actually makes the biggest difference.
I was trying to think somewhere in there where I could throw in my favorite term, sliding scale, but I did not see an opening, so I will save that for the next episode. Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you enjoyed this episode. Up next, we have a Scratching the Surface episode on perception versus reality. Now, for me, I did a lot of research today, and for me, it's like figuring out where you are in the grand scheme of things. Yeah. So I'm very interested to sit down and record that. We're about to record that now. So we hope you enjoyed this episode, and we will talk to you later.
Keep it simple. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for listening to another episode of the Hyper Conscious Podcast.
Going hyper-conscious will absolutely change your life because if you understand why something is the way it is, now you have the power to change it. If you going hyper-conscious with us has changed your life in any way, please share this episode with one of your friends because the more people that go hyper-conscious, the better this world's going to be for everybody.
And if you would kindly leave us a 5-star review on iTunes, that would help us make more people hyper-conscious, and we would be greatly appreciative.
Thank you.
Bye.